The wind howled through the empty streets of Chicago, slicing through every gap in jackets, scarves, and gloves. It was one of those nights where the cold seemed alive, creeping into bones and refusing to let go. Nathan Carter tightened his grip on the strap of his bag as he walked briskly toward the bus stop at the corner of Maple Street. His breath formed clouds in front of him, disappearing almost instantly into the frosty air. He had just finished a long shift at the diner downtown, and all he wanted now was to get home, sink into his couch, and forget about the day. As he approached the bus stop, he noticed someone standing there alone, a woman. She was huddled against the icy gusts, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her coat looked thin, barely enough to shield her from the biting chill. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, trying to keep warm, but it didn't seem to help much. Her dark hair whipped around her face, partially hiding the look of discomfort etched across her features. Nathan slowed down for a moment, watching her. There was something vulnerable about the way she stood there, shivering, and clearly unprepared for the weather. He hesitated, unsure whether to say anything. After all, they were strangers. But then again, wasn't that what people did? Help each other when it mattered most? He glanced down at his own jacket, a worn leather one that had seen better days. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it was sturdy and kept him warm. For a brief second, he thought about ignoring the situation entirely. He could walk past her, pretend he hadn't noticed, and climb onto the bus like everyone else. No harm done. Nobody would blame him for minding his own business. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the memory of his grandmother's voice telling him stories about kindness when he was younger. Or maybe it was simply the fact that he couldn't stand seeing anyone suffer unnecessarily, especially not when he had the means to make things slightly better. Whatever the reason, Nathan took a deep breath, adjusted the strap of his bag, and stepped closer to the woman. "Excuse me," he said, his voice soft but clear over the sound of the wind. The woman turned her head sharply, startled by the interruption. Her blue eyes widened as she looked at him, confusion mingling with surprise. Nathan felt a flicker of nervousness but pushed forward anyway. "You look like you're freezing," he continued. "Here, take this." With that, he slipped off his jacket and held it out to her. The action caught her off guard. For a moment she just stared at him, her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to protest. Then, slowly, she reached out and accepted the garment. "That's very kind of you," she murmured, pulling the jacket around her shoulders. It was too big for her frame, but the warmth it provided was immediate and welcome. She gave him a small, grateful smile. "Thank you." Nathan shrugged, feeling oddly self-conscious. "It's no problem, really." They stood there for a few seconds, neither saying anything more. The silence between them wasn't awkward exactly, it was just quiet, broken only by the occasional rumble of distant traffic and the persistent whistle of the wind. Finally, the woman spoke again. "I'll make sure to return it someday," she said, her tone firm, despite the slight tremor in her voice caused by the cold. "I promise." Nathan chuckled lightly. "Don't worry about it, just stay warm, okay?" She nodded, wrapping the jacket tighter around herself. Then, without another word, she turned back to face the street, waiting silently for the bus to arrive. Nathan lingered for a moment longer, watching her out of the corner of his eye. Something about her intrigued him, though he couldn't quite put his finger on why. There was an air of elegance about her, even in the oversized jacket and disheveled hair. It was subtle, but undeniable. Still, he shook off the thought and reminded himself that it didn't matter. They were strangers, after all, brought together momentarily by circumstance. Once the bus came, they'd go their separate ways, and that would be the end of it. When the bus finally arrived, its headlights cutting through the darkness, Nathan climbed aboard first. He glanced back briefly as the woman followed behind him, still wearing his jacket. She settled into a seat near the middle of the bus while he chose one closer to the front. As the vehicle lurched forward, starting its journey through the city, Nathan found himself glancing at her reflection in the window. She sat upright, clutching the jacket tightly around her, her expression unreadable. For some reason, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Who was she? Where was she headed? Was she visiting someone or perhaps returning home after a tough day? These questions swirled in his mind, though he knew they were pointless. He'd probably never see her again. People crossed paths all the time in cities like Chicago, and most encounters were fleeting, forgotten as quickly as they happened. Yet there was something different about this one. Something about the way she had accepted his offer, not begrudgingly or reluctantly, but with genuine gratitude, had left an impression on him. It wasn't often that Nathan encountered such sincerity, especially in a place where everyone seemed so focused on themselves. As the bus rumbled along, stopping occasionally to pick up passengers, Nathan tried to distract himself by looking out the window. The city lights blurred together as the vehicle sped through intersections and past towering buildings. Snowflakes began falling gently from the sky, melting instantly upon contact with the pavement below. It was a beautiful sight, but Nathan's thoughts kept drifting back to the woman sitting a few rows behind him. Eventually, the bus reached his stop, and he stood up, slinging his bag over his shoulder. As he stepped off, he glanced back once more, catching a glimpse of her silhouette through the fogged-up window. She hadn't moved, still cocooned in his jacket, staring straight ahead. He wondered what she was thinking about, whether she was relieved to have escaped the worst of the cold or anxious about whatever lay ahead for her. Shaking his head, Nathan pulled his scarf tighter around his neck and started walking toward his apartment. The wind stung his cheeks, reminding him that he no longer had his jacket to protect him. But strangely, he didn't feel too bothered by the loss. If anything, he felt lighter, as if giving away something so simple had somehow made room for something bigger. By the time he reached his building, Nathan had almost convinced himself that the encounter meant nothing. It was just a random act of kindness, nothing more. He unlocked the door, climbed the stairs to his third-floor apartment, and stepped inside. The warmth of the space enveloped him immediately, a stark contrast to the frigid night outside. He dropped his bag on the floor, kicked off his shoes, and flopped onto the couch with a sigh. But try as he might, he couldn't shake the image of the woman from his mind. There was something about her that lingered, like the faint scent of cologne, left behind after someone has left a room. He replayed their brief conversation in his head, wondering if he should have said more or less. Had he come across as weird? Too pushy? Or had she appreciated the gesture as much as she seemed to? Before he realized it, hours had passed. Sleep tugged at the edges of his consciousness, urging him to give in. Reluctantly, Nathan dragged himself off the couch and shuffled to bed. As he lay there in the dark, listening to the hum of the radiator, he decided that tomorrow would bring new distractions. By then, the memory of the woman at the bus stop would fade, becoming just another story he could tell himself when he needed a reminder that even small acts of kindness mattered. Little did Nathan know, however, that this wasn't the last he'd hear of her. In fact, their lives were about to become intertwined in ways neither of them could have imagined. But for now, as he drifted off to sleep, all he knew was that he had done the right thing, and that knowledge, however fleeting, was enough. Nathan Carter quickly settled into his new role at Lumina Tech. The office was a whirlwind of activity, with people constantly moving between meetings, brainstorming sessions, and deadlines. At first, he felt like an outsider looking in, someone who didn't quite belong in this world of cutting-edge technology and high-stakes decisions. But as the weeks passed, he began to find his footing. His coworkers were friendly and supportive, offering guidance whenever he needed it. Slowly but surely, Nathan started to feel like part of the team. What surprised him most, however, was how often Claire Bennett crossed his path. She wasn't just the CEO of Lumina Tech. She was deeply involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. Whether it was leading strategy meetings, reviewing project updates, or mentoring junior employees, she seemed to be everywhere at once. And yet, despite her demanding schedule, she always made time to check in with Nathan. "How's everything going?" she asked one afternoon as she stopped by his desk. Her tone was casual, but there was genuine curiosity behind her words. "It's going well," Nathan replied, glancing up from his computer screen. Still getting used to everything, but I'm learning a lot. That's what matters, Claire said with a small smile. Don't hesitate to ask for help if you need it. We're all here to support each other. Her kindness caught Nathan off guard. Most executives wouldn't take the time to personally follow up with someone in his position, let alone remember their name. But Claire was different. There was a humility about her that set her apart from the stereotypical image of a corporate leader. It reminded him of the night they'd met, the way she had accepted his jacket without hesitation, simply grateful for the gesture. As the days turned into weeks, Nathan found himself working closely with Claire more often than not. She assigned him to a special task force focused on developing a new AI platform designed to improve accessibility for people with disabilities. It was an ambitious project, one that required creativity, collaboration, and long hours. Nathan threw himself into the work, determined to prove himself not only to Claire but also to the rest of the team. The late nights became routine. Nathan would stay at the office until well after everyone else had gone home, fine-tuning algorithms, analyzing data, and troubleshooting bugs. Sometimes, Claire joined him, rolling up her sleeves and diving into the technical details alongside the engineers. They worked side by side, discussing ideas and debating solutions, their conversations flowing effortlessly between professional topics and personal anecdotes. One evening, as they sat in the dimly lit conference room surrounded by stacks of papers and empty coffee cups, Claire leaned back in her chair and sighed. "You know," she said, "I never expected to enjoy working with someone so much." Nathan looked up from his laptop, startled by the comment. "Really? I thought CEOs didn't usually get involved in projects like this." Claire laughed softly. "Well, technically, I shouldn't be, but sometimes I miss being hands-on. Running a company means dealing with a lot of politics. It's nice to focus on something tangible for a change." Her honesty struck a chord with Nathan. He'd always assumed that being a CEO meant having everything figured out: money, power, influence. But listening to Claire talk about the pressures of leadership, the constant scrutiny, and the loneliness that came with the job, he realized how wrong he'd been. Beneath her polished exterior was a person who struggled with self-doubt and isolation, just like anyone else. "You make it look easy," Nathan said after a moment. "I mean, you handle everything so well." Claire shook her head. "Trust me, it's not easy. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. But then I think about moments like this, working with talented people, solving problems, making a difference, and it reminds me why I do what I do." Their conversation lingered in Nathan's mind long after they wrapped up for the night. He couldn't stop thinking about the contrast between the confident, composed woman he saw during meetings and the vulnerable, introspective person she revealed in private. It made him admire her even more, not because of her success, but because of the humanity she brought to her role. Over time, their bond grew stronger. While their relationship remained strictly professional during work hours, they occasionally spent time together outside the office. Claire invited Nathan to join her for dinner after particularly grueling days, claiming that food tasted better when shared. They talked about everything: books, movies, childhood memories, and dreams for the future. Nathan learned that Claire had grown up in a small town in Ohio, the daughter of a school teacher and a mechanic. She'd worked tirelessly to earn scholarships and build a career in tech, driven by a desire to create opportunities for others. In return, Nathan opened up about his own life, his struggles growing up in a single-parent household, his love for tinkering with gadgets as a kid, and his dream of using technology to make the world a better place. He hadn't shared these stories with many people before, but with Claire, it felt natural. She listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering encouragement when he doubted himself. Despite their growing closeness, rumors began swirling around the office. Whispers spread about their frequent interactions, late-night work, sessions, and occasional dinners. Some speculated that there was more to their relationship than met the eye, while others dismissed the gossip as idle speculation. Nathan tried to ignore the chatter, focusing instead on his work. But Claire couldn't escape it entirely. One morning, as they walked through the hallway together, a group of employees fell silent upon seeing them approach. Claire raised an eyebrow, clearly aware of the tension in the air. "Ignore them," she muttered under her breath. "They'll get over it." "Are you sure?" Nathan asked hesitantly. "I don't want to cause any trouble." "You're not causing trouble," Claire replied firmly. "We're colleagues doing our jobs. If people can't understand that, that's their problem, not ours." Her confidence reassured him, but the rumors persisted. Even Daniel, Claire's fiancé, started to notice. He was a lawyer who worked at a prestigious firm downtown and, while he rarely visited Luminatech, he wasn't blind to the changes in Claire's behavior. She was spending less time with him and more time at the office, often coming home late or skipping social events altogether. When he confronted her about it, she brushed him off, insisting that work had been especially busy lately. But Daniel wasn't convinced. One evening, after noticing several missed calls from Claire, he decided to surprise her at the office. He arrived unannounced, expecting to find her buried in paperwork or preparing for a meeting. Instead, he walked into the conference room to see her sitting across from Nathan laughing at something he'd said. Jealousy flared in Daniel's chest. "Am I interrupting something?" he asked sharply, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. Claire turned around, startled. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," he shot back, glaring at Nathan. "Care to explain why you're spending so much time with your employee?" "It's not what you think," Claire said quickly, standing up. "We're working on an important project, that's all." "Right," Daniel said sarcastically. "Because staying late every night has nothing to do with anything else." Nathan felt a surge of discomfort. This was exactly the kind of situation he'd hoped to avoid. "Maybe I should leave," he suggested quietly, gathering his things. "No, stay," Claire insisted, turning back to Daniel. "This is ridiculous. You're blowing things out of proportion." "Oh, am I?" Daniel snapped. "Then tell me, Claire, how long has this been going on? How many times have you chosen him over me?" "It's not about choosing anyone," Claire exclaimed, her voice rising. "It's about doing my job and building a team I trust. If you can't understand that, maybe we have bigger issues to deal with." The argument escalated quickly, with both of them exchanging harsh words. Nathan slipped out of the room unnoticed, feeling guilty for being caught in the middle of their conflict. By the time he reached his car, he could still hear their voices echoing in his mind. 2 weeks had passed since the cold night at the bus stop, and Nathan Carter had almost forgotten about the woman in his jacket. Life had gone back to its usual rhythm, working long hours at the diner, catching the late-night bus home, and spending quiet evenings alone in his small apartment. The memory of her gratitude lingered faintly in his mind, but it was easy to push aside as just another random act of kindness. After all, he reminded himself, people crossed paths every day in a city like Chicago, and most encounters didn't mean anything beyond the moment itself. But fate had other plans. One morning, as Nathan scrolled through his phone while sipping coffee, an email caught his eye. It was from Luminatech, a tech company he'd applied to months ago for a junior position. He'd almost given up hope on hearing back from them, assuming his application had been lost in the shuffle of countless others. But here it was, a message, inviting him for an interview later that week. Nathan felt a mix of excitement and nerves. This could be his chance to step out of the monotony of his current life and into something better. Luminatech wasn't just any company. It was a leader in artificial intelligence and innovation, known for pushing boundaries and solving real-world problems. Landing a job there would be a dream come true. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of doubt creeping in. What if he wasn't good enough? What if they realized he didn't belong? On the day of the interview, Nathan dressed carefully in the only suit he owned, a navy blue one he'd bought secondhand, and made sure his shoes were polished. He arrived at Luminatech headquarters early, clutching a folder filled with copies of his resume and references. The building loomed above him, sleek and modern, its glass facade reflecting the gray winter sky. As he walked inside, he felt small and out of place among the bustling crowd of professionals rushing to meetings or chatting animatedly over cups of coffee. The reception area was bright and welcoming, with comfortable chairs arranged neatly around low tables. Nathan checked in with the receptionist, who smiled politely and directed him to take a seat. He sank into one of the chairs, glancing around nervously. Other candidates sat nearby, flipping through notes or practicing answers, under their breath. Everyone seemed so confident, so prepared. Nathan tried to focus on rehearsing his responses, but his thoughts kept wandering. That's when he saw her. At first, he thought it was a trick of his imagination. She strode past the waiting area, her heels clicking softly against the tiled floor. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a neat ponytail, and she wore a tailored black blazer over a crisp white blouse. There was no mistaking those sharp features and piercing blue eyes. He'd recognize them anywhere. It was the woman from the bus stop. Nathan froze, his heart skipping a beat. Could it really be her? The same person who had shivered in the cold, wrapped in his old leather jacket? She looked completely different now, exuding authority and poise. For a moment he considered approaching her, but before he could gather the courage, she disappeared into an office down the hall. He sat there, stunned, replaying the sight in his mind. Was this some kind of bizarre coincidence? Or was the universe playing a cruel joke on him? Either way, he couldn't deny the strange twist of fate that had brought them together again. A few minutes later, a young woman in a skirt suit appeared in the doorway. "Nathan Carter?" she called out, holding a clipboard. "Yes, that's me," Nathan replied, standing quickly. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie and followed her down the hallway. They stopped outside a conference room where the door was already open. Inside, sitting at the head of the table, was none other than the woman from the bus stop. She looked up as he entered, her expression neutral at first. Then, recognition dawned in her eyes. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, followed by a hint of amusement. "You're the man who gave me his jacket," she said, breaking into a small smile. Her voice carried a warmth that hadn't been there during their brief encounter 2 weeks earlier. "Yes, ma'am," Nathan stammered, suddenly feeling self-conscious. He shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to address the elephant in the room or pretend it hadn't happened. I didn't know you worked here." She chuckled lightly, gesturing for him to sit. "Well, now we're even. Let's see what you've got." The rest of the interview went surprisingly well. Claire Bennett, that was her name as he learned during introductions, asked thoughtful questions, probing deeper into his skills and experiences. Nathan found himself relaxing as the conversation flowed naturally. He talked about his passion for problem solving, his love for technology, and his determination to learn and grow. Claire listened intently, nodding occasionally and jotting down notes. Throughout the interview, Nathan couldn't help but notice how different she seemed compared to the vulnerable woman he'd met at the bus stop. Here she was confident and commanding, radiating the presence of someone used to being in charge. Yet there was still a trace of warmth beneath the surface, a glimpse of the person who had accepted his jacket with quiet gratitude. When the interview ended, Claire stood and extended her hand. "Thank you for coming in today," she said. "We'll be in touch soon." Nathan shook her hand, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. "Thank you for your time," he replied. "And thank you again for returning my jacket. It showed up in the mail a couple of days after we met." Claire raised an eyebrow, amused. "Ah, yes. I figured you might need it back. You looked pretty cold without it." They shared a brief laugh before parting ways. As Nathan left the building, he couldn't stop thinking about how surreal the whole experience had been. From offering his jacket to a stranger to interviewing with her for a potential job, it was like something out of a movie. He wondered if she had recognized him immediately, or if she'd needed a moment to place him. Either way, the connection between them felt oddly significant, even though they barely knew each other. Over the next few days, Nathan tried to distract himself by focusing on work and other responsibilities. But the memory of Claire lingered in the back of his mind, refusing to fade away. He replayed snippets of their conversation, analyzing every word and gesture. Had she been impressed by his answers? Did she think he was qualified for the role? Or had their previous encounter influenced her perception of him in some way? Then one afternoon, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID read Lumina Tech. Nathan's stomach dropped. He hesitated for a moment before answering, bracing himself for whatever news awaited him. "Hello," he said cautiously. "Hi, Mr. Carter. This is Emily from Lumina Tech HR," came the cheerful voice on the other end. "I'm pleased to inform you that we'd like to offer you a position with us." Nathan blinked, stunned. "Really? That's amazing. Thank you." "You're welcome," Emily replied. "We'll send over the official offer letter shortly, along with details about your start date and orientation. Congratulations." After hanging up, Nathan stared at his phone in disbelief. He had done it. Against all odds, he had landed the job. A wave of excitement washed over him, followed by a sense of validation. Maybe he was good enough after all. His thoughts immediately turned to Claire. Had she played a role in the decision? Was she the reason he'd been chosen? He wanted to believe it was because of his qualifications, but the timing of their encounter was hard to ignore. Whatever the case, he resolved to prove himself worthy of the opportunity. On his first day at Lumina Tech, Nathan arrived early, eager to make a good impression. The office was buzzing with energy, filled with people typing furiously on keyboards, discussing projects in hushed tones or brainstorming ideas on whiteboards. He was introduced to several team members, each of whom greeted him warmly. Despite the initial overwhelm, he felt a spark of excitement. This was where he belonged. At least, he hoped so. Later that morning, Claire stopped by his desk. She looked just as composed as she had during the interview, though there was a softer edge to her demeanor now. "Welcome aboard," she said with a smile. "How are you settling in?" "I'm doing well, thank you," Nathan replied, feeling a mixture of pride and nervousness. "Everyone's been really helpful." "That's good to hear," Claire said. "If you ever need anything, or if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We're glad to have you here." As she walked away, Nathan watched her go, marveling at the odd turn his life had taken. 2 weeks ago, he had been nothing more than a stranger offering his jacket to a shivering woman at a bus stop. Now he was working alongside her, earning a paycheck at one of the most innovative companies in the city. It was proof that sometimes the smallest actions could lead to the biggest opportunities. And as Nathan settled into his new role, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held, not just for him but for the unlikely bond he'd formed with Claire Bennett. The fallout from Daniel's unexpected visit rippled through Lumina Tech in ways Nathan hadn't anticipated. Though Claire had assured him it wasn't his fault, he couldn't shake the feeling that his presence was causing trouble for her. The tension between Claire and Daniel became a topic of whispered conversations around the office. Some employees pitied Claire, while others speculated about whether she was truly innocent or hiding something deeper. Nathan tried to stay out of the drama, focusing instead on his work, but avoiding the rumors altogether proved impossible. Despite the gossip, Nathan and Claire continued to collaborate closely on their AI accessibility project. They worked tirelessly, pushing themselves to meet tight deadlines and deliver results. Their shared dedication to the project helped ease some of the awkwardness caused by Daniel's accusations, though neither of them brought up the argument again. Still, there was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition that their professional relationship was being tested by forces beyond their control. One evening, as they wrapped up another long day at the office, Claire invited Nathan to join her for dinner at a quiet restaurant nearby. He hesitated initially, unsure if accepting would fuel more speculation, but eventually agreed. Sitting across from her at a small table illuminated by soft candlelight, Nathan realized how much he valued these moments with her. Outside of work, they were free to talk openly without worrying about prying eyes or judgmental whispers. "I'm sorry about the other night," Claire said after their meals arrived. Her tone was calm but tinged with regret. "Daniel shouldn't have shown up like that." "It's not your fault," Nathan replied quickly. I know things are complicated right now. They are, Claire admitted, picking at her food. But I don't want you to feel like you're caught in the middle. You've done nothing wrong. Nathan nodded, appreciating her reassurance. I just hate seeing all this negativity because of me. You're not the reason for any of this, Claire said firmly. Daniel has issues trusting people. It's not fair to blame you or anyone else for that. Her words resonated with Nathan, but they didn't fully erase his guilt. Over the next few days, he noticed Claire seemed distracted, her usual confidence replaced by a quiet weariness. She spent less time at the office and avoided social events altogether. Word spread that she and Daniel were going through a rough patch, though no one dared approach her directly about it. Then, one Friday afternoon, Nathan received a message from Claire asking him to meet her in her office. When he arrived, he found her sitting behind her desk, staring blankly at a stack of papers. For the first time since he'd known her, she looked defeated. Are you okay? Nathan asked cautiously, closing the door behind him. Claire sighed deeply before looking up. Daniel and I broke up. The news hit Nathan like a punch to the gut. What happened? He accused me of having feelings for you, she explained, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. He said I spend more time with you than with him, that I care more about my job than our relationship, and honestly, maybe he's right, but not in the way he thinks. Nathan felt a surge of panic. Claire, I never wanted— I know, she interrupted gently. This isn't your fault, it's mine. I let work consume me and I neglected what mattered most. But even so, I can't pretend everything's fine when it's not. Staying together wouldn't have been fair to either of us. Though her explanation made sense, Nathan couldn't help feeling responsible. Is there anything I can do to help? Claire managed a faint smile. Just keep doing what you're doing. Be here for the team and for me. That's enough. Their conversation ended on a somber note, but it marked the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. In the weeks that followed, Claire threw herself into her work with renewed focus. With Daniel out of the picture, she seemed lighter, freer, as if shedding the burden of a relationship that had become toxic. Nathan supported her every step of the way, ensuring the AI accessibility project stayed on track despite the challenges. Meanwhile, tensions within Luminatech reached a boiling point. A rival company, Novacorp, launched a smear campaign against them, accusing Luminatech of unethical practices related to data privacy. The allegations were baseless, but they gained traction quickly, fueled by sensational headlines and social media outrage. Customers began questioning the integrity of Luminatech's products, and investors grew nervous. The pressure mounted, threatening to destabilize the company. Claire called an emergency meeting to address the crisis. Standing in front of her team, she spoke with unwavering determination. We've built this company on trust and innovation, she said. These accusations are lies meant to undermine our success. Together, we will prove them wrong. Nathan watched as his colleagues rallied around her, ready to defend their work. He knew this was his chance to step up and show Claire, and himself, that he could rise to the occasion. Drawing on his problem-solving skills, he suggested implementing a transparent audit process to demonstrate Luminatech's commitment to ethical standards. The idea gained traction, and soon the entire team was working overtime to gather evidence and counter Novacorp's claims. As the days turned into weeks, Nathan played a key role in leading the effort. He coordinated with external auditors, drafted press releases, and communicated directly with concerned clients. His ability to think strategically and act decisively earned him respect, not only from Claire, but also from his peers. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn in Luminatech's favor. One evening, as they reviewed the latest updates on the campaign, Claire leaned back in her chair and smiled. You've been amazing through all of this, she said. I couldn't have done it without you. Nathan shrugged modestly. It's a team effort. We're all in this together. But you've gone above and beyond, Claire insisted, and I want to make sure you're recognized for it. Before Nathan could respond, she stood up and extended her hand. Come on, let's celebrate. We've earned it. They left the office and walked to a nearby park where the city lights twinkled like stars against the night sky. As they strolled along the path, Claire opened up about the toll the past few months had taken on her. Running a company is hard enough, she confessed. But dealing with personal drama on top of it, I almost lost sight of why I started this journey in the first place. And what's that? Nathan asked softly. To create opportunities for people who might not otherwise have them, Claire replied. To use technology to make lives better. To leave the world a little brighter than I found it. Her words struck a chord with Nathan. He thought about his own motivations, the desire to escape the limitations of his upbringing, to build something meaningful, to connect with others in ways that transcended superficial differences. In many ways, he and Claire weren't so different. After all, as they sat on a bench overlooking the lake, Claire turned to him with a thoughtful expression. You know, when I met you that night at the bus stop, I didn't think much of it. Just a random act of kindness. But looking back, I realize it was more than that. It reminded me that humanity still exists, even in the busiest, coldest corners of the world. Nathan smiled, touched by her sentiment. Sometimes the smallest gestures can lead to the biggest changes. Claire nodded, her gaze fixed on the water. Exactly. And I think we're proof of that. For a moment they sat in silence, watching the ripples dance across the surface of the lake. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. Despite the challenges they'd faced, and those that still lay ahead, Nathan felt a sense of peace. Whatever the future held, he knew he wouldn't face it alone. The weeks following the crisis at Luminatech brought a mix of relief and reflection. The smear campaign launched by Novacorp had been dismantled, thanks in large part to Nathan's leadership and the collective effort of the team. Transparent audits proved that Luminatech adhered to the highest ethical standards, and public trust began to rebuild. Customers returned, investors regained confidence, and the company emerged stronger than ever. For Claire Bennett, it was a hard-fought victory, one that reaffirmed her belief in the power of resilience and teamwork. Nathan Carter, too, felt a sense of accomplishment, unlike anything he'd experienced before. He had started at Luminatech as an outsider, unsure if he belonged in such a prestigious environment. But through determination, creativity, and sheer grit, he had earned not only his place, but also the respect of his colleagues. More importantly, he had formed a bond with Claire that went beyond professional admiration. It was rooted in mutual trust, shared values, and a deep understanding of each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. One morning, Claire called Nathan into her office. She looked unusually serious, which made him nervous. "Close the door," she said, gesturing for him to sit. As he settled into the chair across from her desk, she leaned forward, her blue eyes locking onto his. "I've been thinking about something," she began, pausing to choose her words, carefully. "You've done incredible work here, not just during the crisis, but since day one. You've shown leadership, innovation, and dedication. And honestly, I don't think we'd be where we are today without you." Nathan shifted, uncomfortably unsure how to respond. "Thank you," he said finally. "But I couldn't have done any of it without your guidance or the support of the team." Claire smiled faintly. "That's exactly why I'm promoting you." "Promoting me?" Nathan repeated, stunned. "To what?" "To vice president," she replied matter-of-factly. "You'll oversee our accessibility initiatives and serve as my second in command. It's a big responsibility, but I believe you're ready for it." Nathan sat there in silence, his mind racing. Vice president? Him? A man who had once handed out plates at a diner and worried about making rent? The idea seemed surreal almost, laughable. Yet as he looked at Claire's earnest expression, he realized she wasn't joking. She truly believed in him. I don't know what to say," he admitted, still processing the news. "Say yes," Claire said firmly. "You've earned this, Nathan. Trust me." He nodded slowly, overwhelmed by gratitude and pride. "Okay, yes." Claire grinned, her face lighting up with genuine excitement. "Good. Welcome to the executive team. The promotion came with new challenges, of course." As vice president, Nathan found himself juggling responsibilities he'd never imagined, managing teams, attending high-level meetings, and representing Luminatech at industry events. At first, he doubted his ability to handle it all, but Claire remained a constant source of encouragement. She guided him through difficult decisions, offered advice when he needed it, and celebrated his successes like they were her own. Their partnership became the backbone of Luminatech. Together, they pushed boundaries, tackled complex problems, and inspired their employees to aim higher. Under their leadership, the company flourished, expanding its reach and impact. The AI accessibility platform they had worked so tirelessly on was launched to widespread acclaim, earning awards and recognition worldwide. People with disabilities praised the technology for transforming their lives, giving them access to opportunities they'd never thought possible. Through it all, Nathan and Claire grew closer. Their relationship evolved into something neither of them could fully define, a blend of friendship, mentorship, and unspoken affection. They spent countless hours together, brainstorming ideas, sharing meals, and occasionally venturing outside the office for a change of scenery. On weekends, they explored the city, visiting museums, parks, and hidden gems that reminded them both of simpler times. One evening, after a particularly grueling week, they decided to escape the chaos of work and take a drive along Lake Michigan. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The water shimmered under the fading light, calm and serene. They parked near the shore and stepped out of the car, letting the cool breeze wash over them. "You know," Claire said softly, breaking the comfortable silence, "I used to think success meant having everything figured out. Money, titles, influence, you name it. But now I realize it's about moments like this, quiet, peaceful moments where you can just breathe." Nathan glanced at her, struck by the vulnerability in her voice. "Do you regret anything?" he asked cautiously. "Any choices you've made?" Claire hesitated, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Not really. Sure, there are things I wish I'd done differently. Ending things with Daniel wasn't easy, and I know it hurt him. But staying would have been worse for both of us. Sometimes you have to let go of what's holding you back to find what's waiting ahead." Her words resonated deeply with Nathan. He thought about his own journey, the struggles he'd faced growing up, the sacrifices he'd made to pursue his dreams, and the unexpected twists that had led him to this point. If someone had told him a year ago that he'd be standing here side by side with Claire Bennett, overseeing a groundbreaking project at one of the most innovative companies in the world, he wouldn't have believed it. "What about you?" Claire asked, turning to face him. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we hadn't met that night at the bus stop?" Nathan chuckled lightly. "All the time. Honestly, I probably would have gone on working at the diner, wondering if there was more to life than serving. Coffee and washing dishes. Meeting you changed everything, for the better." Claire smiled, her eyes softening. "Funny how fate works, isn't it? One small act of kindness can set off a chain reaction you'd never expect." They stood there for a while longer, watching the waves lap against the shore. Neither spoke, content to simply exist in the moment. For Nathan, it felt like the pieces of his life were finally falling into place. He had found purpose, passion, and a partner who challenged and supported him in equal measure. And for Claire, it was a reminder that even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, there was beauty to be found, in people, in connections, and in the simplest acts of humanity. A few months later, Luminatech hosted a gala to celebrate the success of their accessibility platform. The event was held at a grand ballroom downtown, filled with glittering chandeliers, elegant decor, and hundreds of guests dressed in their finest attire. Employees, clients, and industry leaders mingled happily, clinking glasses and exchanging stories of triumph and collaboration. Nathan stood near the entrance, adjusting his tie nervously. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially in such a formal setting. But Claire insisted he stay by her side throughout the evening, introducing him to key figures and praising his contributions to the company. "You're doing great," she whispered as they greeted another group of executives. Her hand brushed against his briefly, sending a spark of warmth through him. "Just keep smiling," he laughed quietly, shaking his head. "Easy for you to say. You're used to this kind of thing." "And yet I still get nervous," she admitted, surprising him. Believe it or not, even CEOs feel out of their depth sometimes. Before Nathan could respond, the host took the stage to deliver a speech honoring Luminatech's achievements. As the crowd applauded, Claire pulled Nathan aside. "Come with me," she said, leading him toward a quiet corner of the room. Once they were away from the noise, she turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "I wanted to thank you for everything, not just for your work, but for being, well, you. You remind me of why I started this company in the first place, to make a difference, to connect with people, to leave the world a little brighter than I found it." Nathan felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Claire, She held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Let me finish. I know we've been through a lot together, and I don't want to lose sight of what matters most. So here's my promise to you. No matter what happens next, I'll always stand by your side, just like you've stood by mine." For a moment, Nathan didn't know what to say. Then slowly, he reached out and took her hand. "I promise the same," he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. "Whatever comes our way, we'll face it together." Claire smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Together," she echoed. As they returned to the party hand in hand, Nathan couldn't help but feel hopeful about the future. Life had taken him down paths he'd never imagined, bringing him to places and people he'd once thought were out of reach. And while he knew there would be challenges ahead, he also knew that as long as he had Claire by his side, he could overcome anything. In the end, it wasn't about titles, promotions, or accolades. It was about connection, about finding someone who saw the best in you, even when you struggled to see it yourself. Someone who believed in you, challenged you, and stood by you through thick and thin. For Nathan and Claire, that connection had started with a simple gesture, a jacket offered to a shivering woman at a bus stop. And though their journey was far from over, they both knew it was a beginning worth cherishing.